Now it's the outsider's guide to Has Wokeness Destroyed Hollywood? Well, there was a film recently, a remake of Ghostbusters. It was a feminist version and it lost $50 million at the box office. Many people said, this is it. Woke Hollywood is now losing money, yet they still persist with film after film. We see them, the characters, the plot is all framed around identity politics, gender identities, feminism, same-sex marriage. All these issues, climate change, are now the staple of Hollywood, whereas it used to be good old-fashioned gunfights, goodies and baddies, cowboys and Indians. That's all gone in favour of wokeness. Rita Panahi, James Morrow. Let's kick off with you, James. Has wokeness destroyed Hollywood?
Yes, I'm here to sign the death certificate here for you, Rowan, and say that Hollywood is pretty much over. Cause of death, not COVID-19, but terminal wokeness. And wokeness has been infecting it for years and decades, but after a brave battle, it has finally succumbed.
So what are the worst examples, Rita, of woke Hollywood that have just made your toes curl and you cringe as you've either watched them or, well, like most people, not watched them?
Well, yeah, like most people, not watch them. I think the awards ceremonies are hot spots, the Oscars, the Emmys, and you've seen the ratings for those absolutely plummet as the actors have got into the habit of getting up and lecturing the world about race and sexual relations and global warming and how awful Trump is. I think that's really seen those ratings in freefall. And also the late night talk shows on television, you know, which used to be all about fun, frivolity, having some cutting-edge comedians, having some funny current affairs, but they have just, again, become these scoldy, preachy crap. Like it's basically about getting applause, not getting laughs. So that, I think, has, again, we've seen the ratings for those programs fall, and you've got a show like Greg Gutfeld's show, which outrates so many of the really prominent late-night shows, which have got huge promotional budgets and they get so much media coverage, but this little show on Fox outrates them because it's, one, genuinely funny and just provides a different perspective on things. You know, it doesn't matter how ludicrous the antics of the Democrats are, they refuse to touch it. They just refuse to mock their side.
Well, one critic said of The Last Jedi, which is, of course, one of the Star Wars films, which have increasingly just got worse and worse. The first one was brilliant. The first two were brilliant, but the last ones are just dreadful. One critic said, every male character is either bumbling, incompetent, arrogant, or morally compromised, and every female character is wise, good, prudent, and courageous. The female figures are typically correct, demote control, demure, control, and they roll their eyes at the males who stumble about when not provided with feminine instruction. We've also seen films like The First Man, which was about the landing on the moon, which in order to be politically correct, it didn't even show the American flag because the woke actor said, oh no, it was humanity's success to land on the moon. Correction, it wasn't. It was the American success to land on the moon, and the American flag should have been there. One other critic, James, talking about the film Quentin Tarantino's most recent film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, said it was ridiculously white, the film, and as another critic said, and that it celebrates white male stardom. As one bemused reader said in response, so Tarantino should have made Roman Polanski, Sharon Tate, and the Manson gang all non-white, should they? I mean, extraordinary stuff. And we've seen film after film which is not worth watching, but it gets really serious, James, when we see films like Gone with the Wind being deplatformed. The controversial 1946 film Song of the South with the great song Zippity Doo Dah, that's been completely removed because it suggested, shock horror, that maybe not every single person living under slavery was miserable the entire 100% of the time. Because it suggested that there might have been some levity and humour during those days, bang, the film is gone. How dangerous is this woke approach to Hollywood, James?
Well, look, on one level, it's not dangerous at all because you can just say, well, turn it off. But on the other hand, this stuff is pumping this garbage into the popular culture 24/7. And that's the thing that I'm really worried about. Now, you talk about the First Man movie. I will correct you on that. That flag was taken out, I think, to get it into the Chinese market because the Chinese didn't want to be showing their 1.3 billion citizens and viewers that actually the Americans got to the moon first. Sorry, guys. But, on this other stuff, there's so much else to mention. Blazing Saddles now comes with a trigger warning. And every sort of...
3.5-minute trigger warning.
3.5-minute trigger warning. And now every film, every old franchise, every superhero franchise now has to be remade as kind of, a transgender lesbian Superman or something like that because, of course, the having him as a white male doesn't work anymore. It gets to the point where it's completely ridiculous. You do see occasional things come through that are exceptions to the rule. I thought that the Ford versus Ferrari movie was a really good example of a film that actually somehow, I sat there in the theater, and it's one of the only times I've gone to the theater thinking, how did this thing get made? This is a celebration of a bunch of white men and competition
petrol
and
heads,
the internal combustion engine, all of these things that Hollywood hates. Who green-lighted this? But but the problem, the danger is that it winds up pumping it into the sort of the broader ether of society. And meanwhile, I love it. Every awards season, Rowan and Rita, you see those headlines and they say, oh, brave actor makes such a brave stand for standing up against Trump and standing up for abortion and standing up for trans rights or whatever. And it's like, oh, this is so brave. And yet, talk to people in Hollywood. I've talked to them. They'll tell you that, for example, during the whole Black Lives Matter thing, they were told by their agents, by their friends, you have got to get out there and make a statement. You've got to turn your Instagram profile black. Otherwise, your name is going on the list, and you'll never work again.
McCarthyism in reverse. Rita, I just want to ask you about...
Lawrence Foster,
You've got a young son. I remember when my son was of an age, we'd take him to the movies, and it was that period when there were things like Avatar and Fern Gully Creek, and every big hit movie was basically pumping out climate change as a religion. They were vomitous bloody movies. You'd sit through them and you'd just go, oh my God. Basically, it was the creation of the religion of Gaia, the religion of climate change. We now see a decade later that so many kids have basically adopted that religion. So I would ask you, Rita, as a mum, taking your son to these Hollywood films, is it no longer entertainment? Is it more propaganda? Are you feeling that? Are you sensing that?
Look, I think it's been like that for a while. The left really does dominate that popular culture. It's not just movies, it's music, it's the entertainment industry as a whole, professional sports. So, if you actually want to find someone who's a brave in Hollywood or a brave celebrity in really any field, it's the lone conservative. I mean, can you imagine if you put your hand up and say, I'm with the majority who voted for the Conservatives who are in power? Like, you'd be ostracised. You'd never work again, something Lawrence Fox is contending with. I mean, he just basically said, I don't think Britain is systematically racist, and they've tried to destroy his career, a British actor with 20 years of acting work behind him. And the same is true for Hollywood. Do I worry about the indoctrination with kids? I do, only in the sense that it's not restricted just to Hollywood films. It's so many other facets of what they're exposed to, whether it's at school, whether it's what they see on TikTok or what they're seeing in movies. And at the moment, rather than the environmental message, it seems to be the radical gender theory message. Particularly a few of the superhero films have got that happening, from what I understand. Mind you, I avoid them like the plague. So he goes to those with his mates. I'm not interested in watching Captain America or whatever the hell is happening at the moment.
Well, there was this big push on James to create role models. I mean, it's so asinine. But anyway, the idea that if we create role models, superheroes who are a transgender superhero or this superhero or that superhero, suddenly this is going to fix all the social ills of the world. I mean, it shows how, shallow the social justice cause is, that's the level they operate on. It's just fiction, basically, rather than dealing with actual genuine problems. But I also noticed on films like Avatar, James, this deeply religious sense that, or paganism, if you like, that was being infused into these so-called entertainment, and a false morality, if you like, based not on the traditional sense of morality, but on this new eco-environmental social justice sense of morality. Does that disturb you?
Of course it disturbs me, because as I was saying before, this gets pumped out into the wider culture, then it winds up getting taken as fact. It picks up very cleverly things we have in our society that we recognize just because it's kind of in our cultural DNA from, the Judeo-Christian stories and that sort of morality, and then grafts onto it this new sort of woke morality, whether it's about ecological catastrophes, I think probably when your son was coming up through moviedom, but really more, I think now it's becoming more about intersectional politics, race, gender, that sort of thing. And so it's really disturbing that Hollywood uses its clout. You go back and you look at pictures from the old days, they did actually seem to have a sense that there should be some sort of moral message that, maybe America wasn't the enemy, that maybe society wasn't something to be torn down. And now, of course, it's the exact opposite.
Well, bring back Ben-Hur and Dr. Zhivago, that's what I say. And Star Wars, just watch the first one, forget the rest.